gentlemen, and everyone in between. Welcome to This is a Revolution. I'm here always, your good friend George, here with my good friend, Mr. Dave the Mark. Dave, sir, how are we doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Enjoying sitting, the sun's shining, the doors are open, the cats are in here with me. Like, it feels like a nice summer afternoon rather than a wintry evening doing our podcast.
No, absolutely. We've had months of that, haven't we? Because we started this podcast when it was the summertime, and we had all of those kind of nice elements at the beginning. Then we had to migrate into the winter, and I remember like sitting here in bloody pajamas recording a Mercedes beating Mina Shirakawa video in January time, and now we're almost in May.
We were literally like Christmas jumpers then, weren't we?
Yeah. I mean, I was literally in one of these videos. I was sitting here wearing pajamas. No one knew it was pajamas, but I was wearing pajamas, mate. And yeah, we had Christmas jumpers on, and yeah, now it's April time, and I'm wearing a t-shirt. I've got shorts on. Oh, it's a wonderful time to be alive, my friend. Wonderful time to be alive. Oh, Dave, you know what, mate? It's been a busy last couple of weeks, but seeing the success of our last video, our high stakes 2025 review, it might be uncouth to some, mate, but I'm going to pat myself on the back. 714 views on YouTube. That is insane.
Nice, mate. That's the Mercedes effect in full effect, but also it's kind of like it's nice because it's just what we do on this every week, right? So hopefully if people watched it and enjoyed it, they might come back again today. I was thinking it yesterday, wonder how many people watched Live in London on Rev Pro On Demand, having never watched a 229 show on there before, because you've got all those subscribers that would have just got an account for the month to watch Mercedes versus Kanji and then have hung around. Like, hopefully there'll be some people that tune in today to watch this because they enjoyed the podcast last week. And yeah, like that's the most views we've ever had on a long form video, right? Like we had more on one of our short videos that was Mercedes orientated, but for anything like an hour plus.
Yeah, you're right, mate. So looking at what we've got, the closest we actually had. So this is actually quite interesting if you look at it, right? So I've got the stats in front of me now. So like you said, short form video up there at the top at just under 3,000 views, being that Mercedes Monet beat Mina Shirakawa, and here's who we thought could face her. Our next long amount of views after that, at 373, was our exclusive interview with Kanji, which is wonderful that that's the next one. And then the third one at 271 views is our epic encounter review where Mercedes Monet versus Kanji became official. So
there's no coincidence there, is there? But it's what I like about it is the fact that it is it's kind of like this is just us getting an opportunity to chat about our favorite wrestling product, right?
Absolutely.
And whether we'll have these little bumps and these little bursts. You think this time last year we had MJF, and had we been kind of established with our podcast rhythm by then, we probably would have had a little spike then. But it matters not to me, because it's, if today's video does 100 views, I'll be delighted. And you put things into context. About 750.
Mm-hmm.
That's like York Hall, right? That pretty much fills up York Hall.
Yeah.
Like, that's we've seen shows in York Hall with that number of people there. We've been to Rev Pro shows with 100 people there. We've been to Rev Pro shows with 200 people there. So it puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Like, I like that. Like, if we were doing a WWE podcast, just by the fact that we were talking about WWE, even if it was still just you and me sitting here chatting about Raw and SmackDown every week, we'd probably get much higher views, even though it's the same quality content, simply because there are all those thousands of people that watch that product. So it's all about perspective, but I've always said it to you. It doesn't affect me if there's one person or 100 people. It's just a nice opportunity to get to chat to you and get the thoughts that rattle around my head during a Rev Pro show out there, and for me to kind of start thinking ahead, like, who are the other 4 people in the number 1 contenders tournament going to be? How's that going to play out? Why did they put RKJ and Francisco together and Jay Joshua and Cesaro together and not mix those partnerships up? Like, it's more fun when you get to talk about it, right?
It is. This podcast basically started because I think I said I fancied doing a Rev Pro podcast at one point because I just wanted to do it. And you and I basically just took our WhatsApp chats and we're now just doing our WhatsApp chats on screen. But you know what? What you said,
and the fact that we live like 3 hours apart means that we're never actually going to be able to sit down in the pub and talk about Rev Pro. So we'll do it over the virtual desks.
Absolutely. It's the one constant of my week. And even when I've got things like holidays and stuff, I go, right, how are we going to structure it so that I can come back and do the pod? Like because I just enjoy these chats. And like you said, if one person watches it, if 100 people are subscribed, whatever. But I would like to say in the last 28 days, an extra 12 people have subscribed. So welcome. Lovely to have you here. Hope that you enjoy it. And I hope lots more of you come along, start subscribing. As Red Pro say, one fan at a time. That's the same with us.
Mate.
That's how we're going to build things up. But Dave, you just mentioned there we had a show yesterday. Live in London.
First London show this year without you, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah. So my goal was, I said on this podcast, the end of last year, I'm not going to do as many shows next year. And I've done, this was the first non-Coventry Sheffield show of the year that I hadn't done. Because
put that in perspective, Coventry for you is how many hours away?
About 3 hours.
And Sheffield would be another hour on top of that?
Maybe a bit longer. More, I think. Yeah, maybe longer. I think it's that one is definitely. Coventry could be done the same night if I push myself. Sheffield is a no-no. Would have to be an overnight job.
Sheffield would have to be a hotel, wouldn't it? And then you've obviously got the impacts on work the next day and holiday and all that malarkey.
Yeah, exactly. But what has that been? Let's have a look. 2025. I'm going to take the contender shows out of it, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the 9 shows I think that we've had this year. I've been at, so not bad start. And you know what? It was a nice one to sit and watch from home. There was a couple of matches that when I saw the graphic drop, I was like, and I started having a look. And the train prices was still the same inflated prices they were when I said last time that I wasn't going to make it.
And you literally had just got home from holiday as well, right?
Yeah, so the night before I got home about 7 p.m. and I did 100,000 steps in 3.5 days. So my back was in pain, and I'm still feeling it a little bit. And I thought, this is not the day to be traveling to London, hot foot across to the 229. No matter how much I wanted to, I needed a day at rest because I was back to work today. So yeah, first one this year without me sitting there whispering sweet nothings into your ear, Dave.
I'm curious as well because there's a couple of things. Like, for example, there's one particular detail in one particular match where I don't know what happened, but I suspect you will.
Okay.
Because I was blindsided from my seat, but the camera was facing it straight on.
Okay.
So that's where you watching it from home is actually going to benefit us here.
Yeah.
But we'll come to that when we get to our discussion regarding Mr. Stephen Wolf and Mr. TK Cooper.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out what. Oh no,
Did
no, I
did
think yeah,
TK grab the tights when he
yes,
rolled Stephen Wolf
yes,
up?
yes, he did. Yeah.
So from where I was sitting, it looked completely clean because TK had his back to me.
Hmm.
So my view of it is TK's back and Stephen Wolf's head and neck all rolled up, little
Yeah.
bundle, big win for TK Cooper. But there was an energy around the crowd. And I was like, something's happened here, and I've not quite worked out what it was. And I wondered if Teeks had the tights or not.
Yeah, yeah, he did. He did have the tights.
An
Well,
interesting detail.
it was an interesting detail, very much so, my friend. Before we get into that, shall we give us some ratings? What
Yeah,
are you out of 10? What are you giving the show yesterday?
8 for me.
Wow. Okay.
I think it was the. We said it last time. We said
Hmm.
last time's 229 was the best one of the year so far. I think this one trumped it. I think this was actually the best 229 of the year, which I don't think it's recency bias or anything like that. I think it is literally every year. I find that the first couple of 229s are table setting,
Hmm.
and then we start to hit our rhythm in sort of April, May. This was effectively May's 229,
It
wasn't it?
was, yeah,
Because
yeah, of course,
it's
yeah.
the end of April and then normally the first Sunday of the month. Um, so it's normally around this time. You think this time last year, the main event was meant to be Danny Luna and Rio for the title, and obviously that got delayed a month with Danny Luna not being able to make the show.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
that was like a big moment, and then the following month was the Cutthroat Collective debut. So it's normally around this time that I feel like Rev Pro is starting to hit its stride. And you've kind of got the combination of post high stakes, pre Revolution Rumble. So you've got
hmm,
all that kind of positivity from one set of stories ending.
yeah,
Plus, you've got the what's next for those people whose story hasn't ended. It's just taken it's hit a milestone.
yeah,
I don't think Kanji and Mercedes Monet is over by any stretch of the imagination. But now we're starting to look at how we're going to get back there. But
yeah,
you've also got some ongoing stories because not everything was paid off at high stakes. So we've still got all the stuff with Josh James and Shah. We've still
hmm,
got the CPF and Young Guns things
yeah.
going on. I feel like it's a nice stage of the year, this one, because we're enjoying the effects of one show whilst building up to the next big show and trying to see where everyone's ducks are going to line up for that.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. For me, it was somewhere between a 7 and an 8 for me, and I don't know exactly right now where I'm leaning on that, but somewhere. I mean, I don't want to be cheap in it and say a 7.5. I'm going to say a 7, where there was some bits that I think had real match of the year like contenders on there. There were some bits which were perfectly fine and furthered some storylines, and then there was some other matches that I thought were really good as well. So a perfectly fine 7 for me. I think
It's funny
yesterday.
because I think that the vibe in the 229 was that both of us are lowballing it
Mm.
because there were the main event got a standing ovation. Jay Joshua and Zazaya got a standing ovation. Um, I think Robbie X and Michael Oku got a standing ovation. I don't think Kanji and Charli Evans did, but it bloody should have.
Wild. That is
But
wild.
I think that may also be because of the fact that that match led into an angle, and so you've got a bit of a
Okay, yeah.
maybe people weren't quick to stand up because they could see something was about to happen.
Yeah.
Um, but there was a lot of fan positivity.
Good.
I kind of felt like because I felt like I was being a bit stingy with the fact that some of the matches afterwards when people were like, oh my God, that was like match of the year. Like that was a match of the year contender. And I was sitting there thinking, it's not in my top 10. But then that just goes to show the standard now, right? Because for any match to make it into what I've got as my top 10 of the year, they now have to be better than Danny Luna versus Kanji at the last 229 and Leon Cage versus Leon Slater at the start of the year in the 229.
Yeah, and
they're like the bottom matches on the list now. When you're like,
when you look at it like that,
standard.
Yeah, like I would say, for me, there was some very good matches, but there was one of them is broken into my top 10 of the year, and then there's some others which are just very good matches, and yeah, it was one of those ones that I just felt overall the good was really good, the great was great, and the bits I thought were okay. There's look, I'm gonna be upfront. There's only one bit that I was a bit down on, but I can also see where that helps further storylines in a certain direction as well. So it's not a complete down. That was RKJ versus David Francisco.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
I really liked that.
So you know what? Should we hit in with that one with the tournament then? Because we obviously
yeah. So
right.
We had 2 tournament matches, right? We had RKJ versus David Francisco.
Yeah.
We had Zaya versus Jay Joshua.
Yeah.
They're 2 of the quarterfinals. The expected timeline is that the other 2 quarterfinals will happen 2 weeks' time in Coventry.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks after that, so after the Spain show, Rev Pro goes to Sheffield, where the 2 semi-finals and the final are expected to take place, with the winner of this tournament facing Michael Oku at Revolution Rumble in what is 8 weeks' time.
Yes.
7 weeks' time.
That sounds about right, yeah. So I think I was really up for a match, and this felt more like an angle than a match to me.
Yep.
And that I think that's probably a little bit of it for me. It was an angle dressed up as a match. And look, here's the things. Again, I'll say it probably just didn't suit my tastes, but they did subvert tropes because they could have just done it as an angle, a beat down angle, and then that's how RKJ. So they're not pulling in on the tropes where it's like, oh right, he's gonna be beaten up, 1, 2, 3, job done. I thought David trying to trick Ricky and try and get the upper hand was interesting. It was just all over a bit quick and made. I felt that as much as RKJ, they're trying to make it look like a killer. Where there has been some inconsistencies for me with that whole killer, that attitude, and we've said this before, that at times, there's times when it looked like he should have gone with that a bit more and just didn't, backed off for whatever reason.
Yep.
This is the guy that he had competitive matches with Michael Oku and Leon Slater. That I can't. When I say that, I mean David. David had competitive matches with those guys, and I don't think it does favors to those guys. You could make the argument, and I concede the argument that, well, if those guys have competitive matches and Ricky puts them away that quickly, what does that say about Ricky, right? I can see that, but I don't know why you'd have David have competitive matches with these guys to then just get beaten so quickly. That's just a very me-centric thing, I think.
I completely understand that, though. Yeah. Everything you've said there, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think the reason that I liked it was because I can see how it fits in logically with both men's storyline. Yeah. And I'm going to circle back to that in a second. But it also feels like some of the things that I've been critical of this satisfied.
Okay.
So I thought, for example, Ricky and Cameron Kai, both Ricky and Cameron Kai matches, Ricky should have put Cameron away in a couple of minutes less than he did.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of minutes sounds really like minor little details, but I think if Ricky beats Cameron Kai in 8 minutes or 9 minutes rather than 11 or 12, it establishes where they are in the pecking order a lot more clearly.
Yeah.
And it establishes Ricky as this killer more so. I thought the David, Francisco, and Leon Slater match was too competitive, and I don't think it helped Leon. So I was a bit critical of that match.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, although we could say this kind of makes Leon not look as good, I kind of feel like the mistake there, it sounds so arrogant of me, like just a fan, but in my eyes, this wasn't the problem. It was the fact that Leon and Francisco had that such competitive match.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really liked was, in my eyes, the way I perceive David Francisco is like the used car salesman who is, he manages to just talk his way out of trouble, like the dodgiest fella like that you could ever deal with, but never gets his just desserts because he just finds a way to charm everybody into going along. He's a bit like a Del Boy.
Yeah, I get
And here he's just been caught out. He tried to work Ricky. He tried to jump Ricky. And Ricky's just murdered him. Kishi driver tapped out to the half crab. But I liked that. For Ricky, the way I perceive Ricky is Ricky's biggest weakness is his own mentality.
Mm-hmm.
He is so confident and sure of himself and certain that he is above, professional wrestling wise, everybody else, that sometimes he slips on a banana skin because he's underestimated somebody. And it happened with JJ Gown, it happened with Leighton Buzzard.
Mm-hmm.
He could have put both of those men away much earlier, but he chose to play with his food. And then it came up to bite him on the arse. So I quite like the fact that we've got that killer in Ricky, and he has to get past his own, like him being his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And thinking ahead to the other quarterfinals, what we think they might be, how we think this might play out, that for me is what I would like to see cost Ricky Knight Jr. this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I think he should make it to the final, but not win the final. Because he underestimates the person he's fighting.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same.
Should we take a minute and explore that?
Let's do that, mate. Let's do it. I'm just gonna write down, because we've obviously this is not something we've discussed. So I'm just gonna write down what I think the next matches will be.
I wonder if we've got the same 4 people. And if we do, I wonder if we have them paired up the same way.
Yeah, I reckon we're probably gonna have. I reckon we'll have 3 of the same people, but one of them's just. Oh god, this is making it bad, isn't it? It's leaving my head.
I've gone for 4 really what I feel to be obvious choices.
I think 3 of mine are obvious choices, and for whatever reason, one that was it. Sorry, I've just got Cage Match open going, who am I forgetting here? Right, okay. Yeah, okay. And then, because I'm just going to say right now that we're going to base this on the fact that we both just said we'd like to see Ricky, like, we think, lose in the final. So that's how that side's going to go. So I've based my whole predictions here on what the other ones will be, who will win that semi-final, and then who will beat
And
Ricky in the final.
I've based my prediction on who I would most like to see Oku wrestle at the Revolution Rumble,
Mm-hmm.
and why that's the right time to do this match and how we get there.
Okay.
So, for example, I think Ricky Knight Jr. versus Michael Oku for the championship is a bigger match than the Revolution Rumble title match.
Same.
I think it's the main event somewhere, whereas obviously the Rumble will main event. And I think it is a match where there should be real, genuine belief that either man's going to walk out champion.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas I think with the Rumble, you're going to kind of, I'd imagine whatever the match is, Oku will retain.
Mm-hmm.
So I want a match where Oku can retain and that not be and us still get a really exciting match out of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So who are your four?
Right. My four. JJ Gale.
Yep, same.
Connor Mills.
Same.
Leighton Buzzard.
Ooh, I didn't think of Buzzard.
Oh, and Sean Samuels.
Interesting. So I don't have either of them.
Interesting.
I have JJ, Mills, Leon Slater, and Luke Jacobs.
Interesting.
But I would more than happily, because actually now you'd say Luke can't really be in this because we've got a match for Luke at the J Cup. So let's take Luke out and put Buzzard in.
Uh-huh.
I'm more than happy to do that because Luke was never going to be the person I was going to have win it. But it's a shame actually because I liked Luke being in the tournament because I loved the idea that one of the quarterfinals was Luke versus JJ, and JJ finally got a win over Luke Jacobs. And actually, I'm sorry, Leighton Buzzard. I'm going to keep Luke Jacobs in.
So, and I'll say on mine, Sean Samuels is there on the basis that I wasn't sure if Leon would be back from TNA at this point or not.
Yeah, fair play.
But doesn't
it was Luke Jacobs versus JJ Gale.
Mm-hmm.
JJ Gale wins it, which is massive for their rivalry. Luke's never considered JJ to be on his level.
Mm-hmm.
It gets Luke out and he can concentrate on CPF, and it puts JJ through to the final. JJ seems to be getting some big wins lately. Let's keep that up.
Yeah.
But also, wouldn't you love to see David Francisco trying to convince JJ Gale that now he's pinned one of the tag champions, he should be going after the tag championships, and maybe David Francisco should be his tag partner as the Sons of Southampton. So I kind of like all of that.
Yeah.
And then my other was to suggest Leon Slater versus Connor Mills, and for Connor Mills to be the winner of that, whether it is a clean loss for Leon or Jay Joshua getting involved in somehow, because I'd love to see, we just saw Jay Joshua versus Isaiah again.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see Leon Slater versus Jay Joshua again, now that Jay Joshua has got when they wrestled the first time, Jay was very much in the finding his feet in Rev Pro.
Yeah.
And they had a brilliant match, but nobody thought there was a chance Jay was going to win because he was new to the company.
Yeah,
whereas now there would be a lot more jeopardy involved.
Yeah.
And then my final would be so my semi-final would be JJ Gale versus Connor Mills. My final would be RKJ versus Connor Mills, and I'd have Mills win the tournament, so we get Mills versus Oku, without us ever having to do a feud between Oku and Mills. We've got there purely through competition.
Yeah.
And we get the next chapter of the Destination Everywhere story without having to blow our whole load and explore everything and have the conflict between the pair. We can have all of that surrounding it. We can have all of the I'd love them to do more of the sit downs with Andy Quildan like they did for Oku and Slater.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you've got the. Are they going to get back together? Is Mills going to become like Oku's mate again? Is Mills going to, properly go after Oku from a violent perspective as opposed to a competitive perspective?
Yeah.
I'd love that. And obviously, I love Conor Mills and would love to see as many Conor Mills matches as possible. I think he's one of the most consistently entertaining wrestlers for my tastes in wrestling, or in that locker room. So that's what I'd like. Yours is going to look very different because you've got Leighton Buzzard and Charles Samuels in there.
So it's interesting because, first of all, when I initially conceived the idea of who could go on to win this tournament, before I knew who any of the competitors were, and before I knew when the matches would be and all that, my first thought was Mills. Okay, that was my very first thought. But having time to reflect on it, I think there's another story which you could do and get the payoff. And so I'm gonna caveat it. Shah Samuels in mine is Shah/Leon Slater if he's available for shows.
Cool.
Because like I said, the TNA thing was a bit, and I thought with Shah you could bring him into that. It gives him a bit of a boost. You've got the story with Harry and Josh James in there as well, so you could play something in there a little bit. But I had Leighton Buzzard beating JJ Gale. So Coventry, Leighton wins there. He's obviously his first match back after the match against Ricky. Feels like he's got something to prove. Wins that match. Mills then defeats Shah/Leon. Again, it'll be a really great match whoever he faces. Intriguing story going into that could be obviously him getting his shot against Oku. Leon, the match that he had at high stakes, you can kind of play into that, like he feels deserving of winning it. I think if it was Leon and Mills, I think that would lead to a more intense match in the sense of from a story getting a go at Oku. Then I think you have Leighton beating Mills. And then you have Leighton defeating RKJ in the finals. So we talked earlier about that underestimating thing. Who is the person that RKJ has underestimated?
And yours works much better than mine there because RKJ would underestimate Leighton Buzzard. Even though Leighton won their last match, Ricky would still underestimate him because he's that arrogant.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he'd underestimate Mills like as obviously as he would for your story.
Yeah.
There'd have to be more work to make that work for my one.
Yeah, I think so.
What a lovely full circle moment it would be though for Buzzard.
So
Revolution Rumble to Revolution Rumble.
Oku. But very different people
call as well. Perfect.
Very different people going into it as well.
Yeah.
Because Oku has been showing a little bit more of a different side lately. Very different to who he was when he last went to Revolution Rumble and faced Leighton Buzzard.
Definitely.
Who was a very different proposition in every way. His attitude, his demeanour, his look. Leighton Buzzard is a new person. But I also think it could be a really big cathartic moment because for Leighton versus RKJ. Because like you said, Leighton won that match. But RKJ made sure at the end of it that he was shown who was in charge. So again, he might not have won that match, but he won that night.
Yeah.
Going into this,
it was a little bit like, to use a football analogy, as a West Ham fan, I remember growing up a lot with my dad saying, I think we've scored too early.
Yeah.
And it like for anyone that doesn't really follow football, that seems like a really weird phrase. But when you're the underdog as a football club, if you score in the game too early, what you've effectively done is you've woken up the beast, and they're going to punish you for the fact that you scored the goal.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like Leighton getting the victory just wound Ricky up even more, so Ricky battered him.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, West Ham scoring a goal in the first 10 minutes against like a Man United or a Liverpool or someone, and then getting done 5-1. I really like yours, mate. I'll be honest. If we were now going to decide on whose story we prefer, I'm picking yours.
Do you know what though? I like both, like, because both, and this is the beauty of what they're doing, right? Like, there's two great stories there that can be told, and there's potentially another great story that we've not even considered.
And they're long-term stories, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know it's such a cliche in wrestling fandom of like LTST, but long-term stories are what we live for.
Yeah, multi-layered stories told over years.
It's not just a wrestling thing, right? It's all forms of entertainment.
Yeah, of course
it's in TV, it's in books, it's in films. You plant seeds, you build characters, you develop stories, you come back to things, you have origin stories. It's all part of that to get us invested.
Absolutely. We're just going back and watching a show that we watched on Sky. It's a TV cop show called The Rookie. It's not exactly highbrow stuff, but like we've just gone back to season 1 and gone, this is what their characters were like in this. And we're like, remember how they've gone through the next few seasons? That's effectively what this is. But because wrestling doesn't take that off period, you don't get that chance to go, how are they going to develop these series? Like they are just constantly on the grind. And like you said, the long-term storytelling doesn't always need to be like, oh my god, this story is continuously like the Bloodline story in WWE. At times was artificially extended, where they could take a break from it, go and do something else, and then come back and revisit. And that's what I like about the way that you can't necessarily do that as much on the indies. There's always things that are moving parts that would necessitate doing other things. And I really like the way that either of those stories could come in and just make complete logical sense.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
The match I do want to...
for me as well, RKJ beating Zazaya in the semi-final is because I'm still going to stick with my guns that I think Zazaya winning the Revolution Rumble would be... I'm a little bit torn. I've hesitated there because when we did our start of the year predictions, Zazaya was so hot that I was like, he has to win the Rumble.
Yeah.
I think they did such a good job of heating Leon Slater up from him being relatively like just, I'd say his 2024 in Rev Pro was that he was being used a lot He was on a lot of shows and he always delivered, but he didn't often have a lot of meat to his bones in terms of what he was doing until the Zazaya stuff. Whereas this year, he's just him and Oku and Kanji they're just the three MVPs for me. Like every time they're in the ring, I'm like, this could be a match of the year.
Yeah.
So I'd be very happy with either Leon or Zazaya going through. And what I'd really like, especially as last time we were in York Hall was Uprising, Leon Slater and Zazaya to be the final two of the Rumble.
Yeah, that would be cool.
And do you remember the Shawn Michaels Undertaker Rumble, where they basically had a little match at the end of the Rumble before one of them was eliminated?
Yeah.
I'd quite like that. For it to be that Zazaya and Leon get 5 minutes, just them in the ring together before one of them goes over the top.
Yeah, agreed. I think that would be really fun. And yeah, I'd be the same. Like Leon, like the way they made me feel in that match at high stakes. Done a tremendous job. But you mentioned Zazaya there, and Zazaya versus Jay Joshua. What a match! How did that
come across on the feed?
In what sense? What in terms of like how good the match was, or how the crowd came? In what way you wanted to know?
Just how, in terms of the other matches on the show, how high were you on it?
Oh, I was very high on this one. I thought this one was, for me, this was probably my second favourite match of the night. It was just so well done, and there was bits in this match where I was like, oh, it's a shame they're throwing this trope in there. And then that ended up playing into the finish of the match. And I was like, actually, that's really clever because it's subverting
Yeah, I
expectations.
really liked the finish, and I
Yeah.
liked they nearly were counted out, and then one was counted out. I really liked that.
Yeah. So the bit I'm talking about then before that was I really hate the 9. Oh, we're okay. Dive back in. And look, if I have one very minor criticism, it was that they probably should have counted a 10 because it went on a little bit longer. But you know what? That's a very minor criticism there. But I hate that. I genuinely hate it because everywhere does it. It happens.
Yeah.
It's like the spot that used to happen in Southampton. Everyone goes down in the middle of the seats, right? When they dive out. I'd be like, oh, we see this all the time. Every wrestling company, whether it's AEW, WWE, Rev Pro, do that 9. Oh, we better get back in. It does nothing for me anymore. So I was like, oh, that's a shame they did that because I hate it. But that, again, very minor niggle, very minor. I thought it was great. I thought the wrestling, like, these two are so good at what they do. Like, the dive, I think it was a dive into a kick, and like diving headbutt into a kick that Cesaro spotted, like, and took Jay out. These two have just chemistry. Like, we've said this before about styles making fights, and what's really interesting is that people will look at this and go, well, Cesaro is probably the more, like, he's the quick, not high flyer because he's very well rounded, but Jay is also a really nimble big man. And that really adds into it because he does stuff where you wouldn't expect him to appear, and there he is doing a diving headbutt, like, so that adds like the shock value of going, you know, this is what Jay Joshua is about, but still he's doing things that you wouldn't expect to see from him. I thought the end did a really great job, and it almost babyfaced Jay a little bit, which I found that as really interesting because obviously him and
that was an extremely gnarly bump he took, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
that was high risk.
That what I completely forgot about. I don't know how I can forget about that. Yeah. The bump was something else, and look, props to these guys who go out there, whether it's a big WWE style venue or the 229, where you're that close in with the fans, and there is no room for error, because if you get that wrong, you hurt someone badly.
And you're talking about necks, aren't you? At the end of the day, you're talking about necks and backs. There is no margin for error.
No,
look at your Tyson Kidds and your Jason Jordans of the world, who careers are just taken away before they've really got started.
Mm-hmm.
I found this match a little bit difficult, and I don't really know why. And this is going to sound like the weirdest kind of judgment on it. I wouldn't even say it's a criticism. Some of the moments where it felt like it would be really easy to be a bit physical with each other, I thought were a little bit soft.
Okay.
So, for example, there's a moment when they're both on the mat on the knees, and they're hitting each other, kind of open palm strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And they were nowhere near as hard as I've seen them hit before, or at least maybe they were, but they weren't coming across that way. But then on the other hand, they were taking these incredible risks with other things that they were doing. And it felt a little bit like there were some big risks in there, which were like really kind of really big moments that maybe wouldn't have been as necessary if the smaller things had landed a bit more.
Okay.
And it felt like they were going hell for leather. And that fits in perfectly well with the story, you know, you'd expect them to. But it just, not everything kind of, it just didn't quite work for me as much as it seemed to work. And I'll say this, for everybody around me. Everybody was loving it.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit, I wasn't feeling very well yesterday at the 229. I was almost, oh my God, I might miss my first show of the year simply because I wasn't feeling great. So that might have been part of it. Sometimes as well, the more the people around you enjoy it, the more it highlights the fact that you haven't quite connected with it yet.
Yeah.
A bit like when like a new album comes out and everyone's raving about it, and you're only on the third or fourth listen, and you're like, I'm not getting it. And so I'm really keen to watch this one back. I want to make it clear, I very much enjoyed it, and I thought it was a really good match. It's just the fact that everybody around me was enjoying it to the level that it was like by far the match of the night, and for me it wasn't. And
yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I feel like I normally enjoy both men's work so much that I think I was almost expecting to adore this match.
And
so maybe
that's
there was an element of just me over. I don't know what I was expecting, because it feels like they did everything. It's not like I was saying they weren't doing enough to grab me. It just wasn't quite all linking together.
Yeah, that happens, right? Like we said this actually talking about Mills and Joshua versus Young Guns. Sometimes you can hype yourself up so much for a match that no matter what they go out there and do, it's not going to meet your expectations, because you are a fan and you get that into it. Sometimes as well, like one of the matches on this card, the guys you know so well and you know their chemistry so well that sometimes it can be that bit more you're kind of going, I still feel like something more needs to happen for me to connect, but you can't put your finger on what that is, because, and I said this about RevPro a lot, that the level of which I judge RevPro now over the last 18 months has risen so much.
Yeah.
Right, in 18 months. And matches that I would have said would have been main event, match of the night, guaranteed matches now happen in the mid card on this show. So that's also a thing there where you've got that. I would say.
I think that I am less forgiving of. I think in the past, when I watched Rev Pro matches, there'd be times where I'd be like, oh, that was a little, that bit didn't quite work, did it? Or he didn't quite land that, or that's a bit of a trope, or the classic everybody standing there waiting to catch somebody who's about to do a dive, that sort of thing. And you'd be like, well, at the end of the day, their safety is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm a little bit more like, but if you can't do it perfectly and safely, don't do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I judge Rev Pro the way I judge AEW and the way I judge WWE and the way I judge New Japan. Mm-hmm. And that's a compliment to Rev Pro, because if I was going to watch an independent wrestling show with 200 people in Bedford Town Centre, I wouldn't be judging it like that. 100%. Like, not in the slightest. I also think there's an element of, when you watch wrestlers as frequently as we do, you're seeing the same guys regularly, sometimes you become a little bit numb to how good at some of the things that they are. Mm-hmm. And it can be like, oh, Jay Joshua's done that really cool headbutt again.
Yeah.
And, then, it's harder to keep it fresh when I think yesterday was something like my 40th Cesare match. Mm-hmm. Jay Joshua's well into the 20s of number of times I've seen him now. It's like, it's a lot of time seeing the same people. And the most important thing I say from this is I really enjoyed the match. Yeah. It was really good. And I'd encourage people to go and watch it. It just, there were other matches on the card that I thought clicked a little bit better.
And that's it, right? Like, I would say for me as well, one of the things that you said there earlier was about it, like people to them being match of the night. And that's the cool thing, right? There's so many different types of matches that grab people in different ways. And I know there was another match that other people saw as match of the night. For me, by this point, the match of the night had already happened. So that also then plays, like when you had such matches that draw you in so much, and especially live, right? That is also a difference. So I noticed watching live at home, live in the venue to watching live on demand, my energy levels are very different because I'm not sitting there being dragged into this performance that I feel like I need to expend all my energy. Like, I don't sit at home chanting away. I'm sitting going, yeah, that's good. I'm more of a New Japan when something goes well at home. But that's why maybe some of the matches draw me in differently, where if you are in the venue and you're being drawn emotionally and using all your energy, that could also be a part of it. We've spoken about the difference between the live event experience and the watching on TV experience, right? So there could be
also, when you're watching it there, you can see everything. Whereas when you're watching it on TV, you can only see what the camera is showing you.
Yeah.
And you think when we're watching some of the big, your WWEs and your AEWs and your New Japans, and for this I'd especially go to WWE. They're hugely financially backed companies, where one of the things they pride themselves on is getting those perfect camera shots. So I watched the SmackDown TLC match Saturday morning. People raved about it, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's not something I'm going to go back and watch again. Those matches, plunder matches, aren't really my thing. I'd rather watch a 15-minute Chris Ridgeway match than a 15-minute TLC match. That's my tastes in wrestling. Yeah. But there were so many parts of it that were executed brilliantly. But I was thinking as I was watching it, I wonder what everyone else is doing right now. Because I remember last week I talked about the gauntlet match. There being lots of people outside the ring, not really doing too much at a time. You don't see that on TV because they won't let you see that.
Yeah.
And so in the TLC match, where you're just focusing on what you can see, what can't I see? Whereas when you're there live, you see everything. Yeah. So it is. I think it swings and roundabouts. You've got the live experience can draw you in and make you feel it more than TV, but at the same time, it's even more open to scrutiny when you can see it live because of the fact that you have all the camera angles in one go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. So, Dave, we're an hour in at this point. We've done a couple of matches. Shall we do a quick light touch couple of matches, and we'll speak on those?
I think there are some in the first half, especially, where we can do that.
Yeah. So, Stephen Wolf versus TK Cooper. I thought perfectly fine match. TK showed some great stuff there as well, and
I loved how they started it with, like, we've just watched Chris Ridgeway, and then these guys came out and were like, "We can wrestle too." Yeah, we know how to do this stuff. We're professionals as well, and they had this really great exchange at the start, and I was like, "Yes, more of that, please."
Yeah, there was some sort of standing flip move. I can't remember exactly what it was from TK. Where I was like, "That was pretty nice."
TK's I really enjoy his singles matches.
Yeah, same.
We don't get them very often, but they're always really good.
Yeah, and look, I've made no bones about it. TK Cooper is a singles guy. Singles heel, especially, is what I've been wanting for TK Cooper.
Do you feel like that might be something we're going back to?
Well, after that finish, I was hopeful.
Because I also don't forget, last time they were in the 229, they were like booed out the building is a little bit dramatic. But they were going for a kind of sympathetic Sunshine Machine performance, and the crowd weren't into it. They were just too busy cheering for Jay Joshua and Connor Mills.
Yeah. And
so I'm curious to see what's next for Sunshine Machine and how much they're reading into that. I mean, it was just one crowd. Maybe it was just.
And it was Mills and Joshua who were cool as fuck.
So popular.
Right? Yeah, so popular, so cool. But I do think that Sunshine Machine and Rev Pro needs a new wrinkle in their story. If
I
they're
feel so as well.
yeah,
There's
like
been
need to freshen the act up.
there've been a permanent fixture or a semi-permanent fixture for the entirety of my. I think yesterday was my 79th live Rev Pro show.
Mm-hmm.
From February 2022 to now. And of all of the people that we've seen in Rev Pro, they've probably changed the least.
Mm-hmm.
But they've told a hell of a lot of stories in that time.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're so good at making the most of whatever they're given.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if they're just putting stuff in there just to kind of from their own creativity.
Yeah.
Put stuff in there to get people like us talking and to maybe even inspire Andy to be like, oh, I might book that.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Just breadcrumbs. I'm curious to see what's next. I don't feel like that was for no reason whatsoever.
No, I'm with you.
I'm really sad to see Stephen Wolf go. He's gone from like last year. I really enjoyed meeting him, and I enjoyed his couple of matches last year. But we get a lot of that. You know, people come over, do a couple of matches, you get to say hello to them, get a photo with them, and then, you know, it's on to the next one. Him getting to come over and stay for a period of time, like, I'm going to really miss him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's really become part of the Rev Pro family. Really consistent performer, lovely fella, like, and you can just see he's just such a positive guy. Like, you can see how well he's gelled with everybody just by seeing him like around the company. Like, I'm sure it won't be long before we see him again.
No, and it's funny because like I think he's wrestled 10 matches for Rev Pro this year, 9 or 10 matches, which is insane.
I think yesterday was my 10th.
Yeah,
and I think 9 of those of this year.
Yeah, it must be 9. Yeah.
I didn't get to see his Leon Slater match last year. I missed that one. But I got to see his Mills match and then every match on this run. Plus, I'm not sure how canonized we're making the contenders shows.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah.
But you know, cage match will have them as logged on record.
Yeah.
And they'll go on their like, you know, official records. But then they're not Rev Pro on demand and not kind of fitting into the canon of the story. So
yeah, I get you with that. But
matches.
I think the guy's done really, really well. He's, like you said, ingratiated himself into the Rev Pro family, the community. Feels like a Rev Pro wrestler. He doesn't feel like an import coming in to do a few shows.
No, not at all.
I wonder. I think we get him back for the anniversary show because I feel like with it being a 2-day anniversary show, you've got to find the spots for the guys that have come over and done the excursions and made it like. So there's got to be Amanda's match in there somewhere. There's got to be a Stephen Wolf match in there.
It's going to be hard, right, for the anniversary show because you'd imagine. So the last time they did a 2-day anniversary show was 2010.
Mm-hmm.
2010 was the 10th anniversary. 2022, and it was absolutely cursed because it was when Andy quite openly documented the fact that he had a really, really bad health turn, and Rev Pro kind of had to run a little bit on the back burner whilst he recovered. But on that 2-day show, everybody kind of worked both shows, and this year they don't need to do that, and there's enough talent to not do that.
Yeah,
so I'd be really curious to see what the 2-day show looks like. Do we see lots more people getting an opportunity? I'm hoping they're going to go for like 2 days of 7 matches because there were 10 matches at last year's anniversary show, weren't there? Because there was the pre-show match and then 9 on the card. And for my personal tastes, I never like it when I see more than 8 matches on the show, no matter what the event. and that's any company. That's any
Yeah.
company in the world as well, because it's just, I do believe in too much of a good thing. So yeah, I'm really fascinated by that.
My mind has kind of gone somewhere like 8 on the main, 1 pre-show, or 7 on the main, 2 pre-shows. That's kind of where my mind's gone in. And in my mind, for no reason, I've kind of thought 30 to 40% of the people on night 1 will also wrestle night 2. That's kind of like that.
I personally, I don't think they need a pre-show for Crystal Palace. I can understand why you do it for the Copper Box because it's a much bigger venue, but I don't think it's required for Crystal Palace. So personally, what I would like to see is just 8 and 8.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that as well. Yeah,
or 2 7s. I'd be very, very happy with 2 7s. Especially if you get your interval, because I do think an interval is important.
Intervals are important, yes. Agreed.
Just a break.
Yeah.
Be able to go and get some water, go and do a wee. Not have to forsake some wrestling to be able to do those things. But at the same time, I think I feel like the Doncaster show, had the gauntlet match been a little bit less time consuming, had it been 25 minutes, not 33, I feel like there's a precedent for 7 matches which worked without an interval.
Yeah.
If maybe that gauntlet was that a little bit tighter.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Yeah.
What did you make of Harry, Shah, and Josh?
I thought it told a story really well. I'm liking this story, and I'm liking that it's not oversaturating. It's just little bits here and there, and it's building up over time. Because it really felt like the story was building between Shah and Josh. Then Josh got injured, and I don't know how much of it was by luck or by design, but they stumbled onto something great and fun with Harry and Shah.
It's like you can't imagine Harry was ever in the original plans, but it's benefiting everybody that he is in it.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't know how well it came across on demand, but this was very, very popular. There were a lot of people that were very, very much into Harry, Shah, and Josh.
Interesting. It didn't necessarily come across like massively like that, but again, there was I think that's comparing it to the way the crowd were with some other things. But it definitely seemed like they were having fun with it, and I think that's important. And I've said before, and I know I've talked about comedy wrestling before, and said by and large, when comedy is overdone, it's not my bag.
Yeah,
but I feel like this is done just enough. And I think it's because you know what's coming.
I'm not a big fan of the comedic side of wrestling. I'm such a miserable wrestling fan, aren't I? I love Chris Ridgway matches and I hate anything fun. But I don't know. There's something about this. I love Shaw Samuels. I love Harry and Josh. I love Caven, True, and Lacey. I thought they were the perfect foes for it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's a part of me that would like it to be told a little bit slower, a little bit more nuanced. But then there's a part of me that's like, oh, just enjoy it. It's good fun.
Yeah.
And it is fun. And it's not like I'm being forced to have fun. I am having fun with it. I'm laughing. The Harry and Shah in the tag team gauntlet match last year in Coventry, I've never laughed that much at wrestling ever.
Yeah.
It's literally giggling away, having such a fun time. And I like it's interesting because on the one hand, I'd like it to be eked out a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, this has been going on now for several months.
It has, yeah.
The Richard Holiday match was in March, the start of March.
Yeah.
Yes, the start of March. The Sheffield Richard Holiday match with Harry was 2 months ago, end of February. So actually, it's if they went any slower, yes, it would be a wonderful luxury if they had weekly television and they could do little backstage segments. If it was, you know, a WWE and AEW, something like that, yeah, maybe you would go a little bit slower. But they don't really have that luxury, so that's probably a moot point from me. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I liked the fact that it was 8 minutes long.
Yes, I mean,
this didn't need to be longer than that.
It didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome. I mean, I think this story is being told at the right pace for me because we spoke about the Coventry trios, which was September, if I remember correctly.
November.
Oh, it was as late as that, was it? But even then, November. So we've been telling this story since November last year. So
that's still 6 months ago, isn't it? Like, yeah, like almost.
Yeah. So we're telling this story bit by bit. We're adding little bits into.
And we had obviously we had Josh prior to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So adding the little bits of lore into it. When I speak about the comedy stuff, I'll tell you where my modern hatred is the Roderick Strong Adam chant over and over, right? That I'm like, if there is a payoff, so if the payoff is him saying, look, I did this to make you all think I was like weak or something, right? And then just go to serious, which is where I think we're going with Shah and Josh James here. I think that's where the payoff is. The payoff is for Shah's mask to slip and to be the real nasty bastard. And whether that ends up Shah and Josh as a team or Josh and Harry as a team, right?
But you know what? Like, again, they're making lemon parfait out of lemons, not just making lemonade out of it. Because I can see Josh turning heel.
Mm-hmm. So can I.
And everybody looking at Shah when really it's Josh that's just going to snap.
Yeah.
And snap by snapping Harry, and it'd be like this unforgivable thing. Like, you can't put your hands on Francesca. Cutthroat Collective did it. You can't put your hands on Harry Milligan. Not like that. That's such an easy way to get heat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like the obvious story is Shah. So you've got the obvious and then the potential alternative. And it's going to be one of those ones where you're just constantly watching them both.
Yeah.
What was the example recently? I'm trying to think what it was. I'm sure it was WWE one. And they're I can't think of it. It's gone. Sorry, terrible audio podcasting. But just like when you got two wrestlers in the ring, you don't trust either of them.
Yeah.
So every single time one of them turns their back on the other one, you're like, oh my God, is he going to attack him? Is that what we're about to be told? And I can see that with Josh and Shah. Like, you just don't. Josh has never given us a reason not to trust him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's only so much the fella can take. He's being treated like shit.
Yeah.
And I'm really into it. Like, it's. Yeah. So there's this comedic element to their performance, but there's a real, genuine story behind it as well.
Yes,
which
there
we
is.
Can all relate to.
And I think that's it. There's that genuine story. We know there's going to be a payoff to it. Let's have fun until we're not having fun anymore. Also, just a couple of bits to point out on Coventry and Lacey. I loved the bit of commentary at the beginning, which you wouldn't have heard, saying True and Lacey back from their stint in NXT Japan, and
was that Gideon by any chance?
Yeah, and I also really enjoyed the finish. I thought that was a great trio finish. It feels like the guys have now.
What was the finish?
So True and Lacey had, I think it was Harry in. Basically, it looked like almost like a powerbomb stunner kind of move, and then Cave went to the top, coup de grace. Down. Yeah. It was great because again, further as we said about solidifying them as a trio, it did more there to go. These guys are all aligned, so I thought that.
Yeah,
was great.
I loved seeing True and Lacey back. They've gone from being a team that turned up the first time I saw them and just being like, don't know who these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what they're about. To being like, I feel like they're quite unique. In Rev Pro, they can do so many things. I still really look forward to a potential one day like face run for them. I think they'd be brilliant at just getting beaten up every week.
Yeah.
and not being able to be successful, and there being an element of comedy, because I feel like they'd both be really good at that. But it not just be comedy, it be, God, I really want these guys to do well. A little bit like early Sunshine Machine days, when they stopped being Escape the Mid Card and they started being Sunshine Machine. Yep, really glad to have them back. Did you enjoy Chris Ridgway versus Leon Cage as much as I did?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Both of these guys are incapable of having a bad match.
Yeah, their first match was great. Like, I absolutely adored it.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to compare this match to it, because why decide which piece of steak is nicer than the other when you've got two lovely bits of steak? Just add it to the fact that Chris Ridgway and Leon Cage have great matches together. Yeah. We've had two of them. Definitely want a third now, somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
And mate, Chris Ridgway, undisputed British Cruiserweight champion. Like, at some point, I just feel like he could do so much good with that belt. Yeah. Of just being a horrible, nasty veteran bully who beats the shit out of all the young guys.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Just having murdering Leon Cage and Nino Bryan, and in a couple of years' time, the new Leon Cage and the new Nino Bryan. Just, I feel like he would have such a good championship run in him. I know it must be difficult because he's in demand and he's had periods out of the country wrestling in Japan, but if it were me, I'd definitely be thinking about like how at some point we could transition the belt to him. Maybe after, obviously not from Caven to Ridgway. I'm starting to get on board completely with the idea that maybe Leon Cage should be the one to take it from Caven.
Yeah,
with
I would agree.
An unexpected J Cup victory. He's so hot right now, and you know, with these guys, you never know how long you're going to have them for, so strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
But then I'd love the idea that we could have this Ridgway and Leon Cage history to come back to when it's time for Leon to pass the belt on. So
yeah, I would agree with all of that.
I really, really enjoyed it, mate.
It was a really mature performance. Yeah.
I really enjoyed Robbie X and Michael Oku. Because I really liked how it wasn't trying to be the main event.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best of Michael Oku versus the best of Robbie X.
No.
It was, don't get me wrong. But you know how, like, there are wrestlers will wrestle at a different level. They will go all guns blazing if they're the main event, because you're sending the crowd home happy. If Robbie and Oku had gone out and done a 30-minute incredible, the best that they could do, it would obviously steal the card and steal the show. But it shouldn't steal the show, because Young Guns and CPF are in the main event, and there's meant to be excitement and jeopardy around that match. So they went out and they just did something different that was still really entertaining, that was still all out, and I think it still went maybe close to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. Cage match doesn't have times up yet, so I can't even check that.
I think it went close to 20 minutes. I don't think it went over 20 minutes. I think back to when Robbie challenged Oku, I think for the title. It might not have been for the title, but it was in the main event when Oku was the champion at the 229 in 2023, and they had a proper Oku and Robbie X main event. And this wasn't that, but this was perfect for what it was meant to be. The first match back after the interval, all the dynamics between Robbie and Amira, just slagging each other off and just being a pair of like nuisances.
Yeah, what are you still out here for? Piss off.
And you just, I really enjoyed it. It really understood what its role was.
Yes,
and the guys are just unbelievably good.
Yeah, they are. And that's the point I was making earlier when I said there's matches that would be the main event 3 years ago, 2 years ago. This is the match. That match, even at that pace, would have been the main event a couple of years ago, and is
Yeah,
now allowed to be that mid card match. And it's two guys who are very confident in their spot on the roster, so they
yep,
don't have to go all out to catch people's eyes because their work and their catalogue speaks for itself. So they can go out and wrestle that very different style of match,
yep.
which is why I said this is a very good match. It was a very good match. It was perfectly fine what I needed it to be for this stage in the card, building up to what we had to come later.
I love as well, like, I'm saying this. So I've been to a couple of shows. I've not been to many shows that aren't Rev Pro. I've been to a couple of shows that were that the ones that come to mind. I went to watch Impact Wrestling in the HMV Empire in Coventry a couple of years ago. I went to watch All Elite Wrestling for their Dynamite and Collision in Cardiff. And on both shows, I felt like wrestlers, the phrase phoning it in comes to mind, but I don't like that. And I don't like that phrase. And I don't feel like that's what they were doing. I feel like they were being economical with how much kind of risk, how many bumps, how much they were willing to give based upon the show, where it was, how significant it was to the company they were wrestling for.
Yeah.
I was very excited at the idea of getting to watch Claudio Castagnoli versus Kazuchika Okada, for example. That sounds like what a wonderful match to watch, but I don't feel I can particularly remember anything that happened in that match. It was very solid. Michael Oku versus Robbie X yesterday was not very solid. It was bloody brilliant. There was nothing that was economical about what they were doing. They weren't saving their bump counter or anything like that. The point we're making is that they could have gone into another gear from the start, that they didn't because of the fact that this wasn't the Michael Oku Robbie X match.
Yes.
This wasn't all about them. This was going to be about, Kanji and Charli Evans had that opportunity, and CPF and Young Guns had that opportunity. Yeah. And clearly Zazaya and Jay Joshua had that opportunity. Because Jay Joshua and Zazaya had the story, and Kanji and CPF had the spot on the card, the main event of their half. Everything else has to kind of know its place.
Yeah.
And yeah, it always kind of makes me laugh because we're talking about the standard to which we're judging Rev Pro. You're grading it on a curve.
Yeah, we are.
It brings us to our last two matches. Which one do you want to start with? I'll let you pick.
Do you know what? Let's start with the main event.
Go for it.
So,
what did you think?
I thought the main event at its best was a very good match.
I agree.
But I think, look, we say trust in the process a lot, right? And I'm with that. But I found it interesting that getting here, we had both CPF guys take singles losses. Okay. I found that they put up a valiant effort, and then they started getting on the mic and started talking, and you were like, here we go, right? Because, look, it's very early in the run for Young Guns to lose the belts, but it was also very early in the run for Mills and Joshua to lose the belts. So you don't necessarily have to have a long run for it to be impactful. And I'd say Young Guns' run had been impactful. And I thought maybe this is where a switch could happen, like with the trophies. And then you had Young Guns come in, attack. Okay, cool, a certain dominance again. And then you had the microphone out again. And you had Young Guns come in and assert dominance again and left them laying there. Obviously mentioned the no DQ match for York Hall, which feels like a very long time out to be calling that, because the next York Hall that I'm aware of is Revolution Rumble, which we've said is about 7 weeks away.
Yeah,
7 weeks. So you've got nearly 2 months where, unless they decide to do something in the middle where another team usurps Young Guns and takes the titles.
There's a lot of shows between now and then as well.
There is, which means that unless they do something a bit different, so they could go with this, where they could subvert things, is they could subvert it by Young Guns are the ones that called the time and place, right? So they mentioned, CPF mentioned the trophies. Do CPF use the trophies at some other point to get the titles before York Hall, which then turns into a defense against Young Guns in a no DQ match? That's a route you could go.
I got a feeling that they were, when they said something along the lines of, you're going to earn them.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I thought, okay, so CPF are going to have to win some matches.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's going to be like almost like a gauntlet that the Young Guns are laying down to them. You know, you've got to stay undefeated until York Hall, and then we'll put belts up against you. But then they revealed the no DQ, and it's like, okay, is that you're going to have to earn them?
Yeah.
So I've kind of got more questions than answers, which I don't mind. I never mind having more questions than answers, because I trust the process, and I do that not through blind faith, but through
it's been earned.
Years of being pleasantly rewarded for my faith in it.
I agree.
I have no problem whatsoever with CPF just having their asses handed to them, because it's one thing that I don't like in wrestling. One thing that I'm really, really against, as well as many other things that I often moan about, but is one thing that I hate is when one performer, team, regularly loses until they win, and then they just become this established serial winner.
Mm-hmm.
And CPF could never buy a victory in RevPro, and then they got a win before the Trios tournament, and then they won the Trios tournament, and they've had some wins since then. But I don't want us to forget about the fact that they were, for a long time, often losers.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that balance. I want to see Leon Cage still lose lots of matches in RevPro. I don't want him to go on this like undefeated streak now.
Yeah.
Unless the caliber of person he's wrestling makes sense for that. So I liked that. It made Ethan and Luke just seem horrid. And it's, you know, I love Joe Lando and Danny Black. Like, they have a way of just making me always want to cheer for them.
Yeah.
So I like all of it, and I enjoyed the match. I didn't have as much jeopardy as you did. I know you were very open to the idea that they might do a change, and you know, you look at the cage match and you look at RevPro title defenses. A lot of teams don't make it past their first defense, especially in the tag division over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do make it through their first defense, they lose in the second or the third. There's not many long title runs with the tag belt. So I get where you were coming from with it. The last time they did a street fight or a no DQ in York Hall for a tag match was Greedy Souls versus Sunshine Machine. And it was like really, really high quality.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that match. I get where you're coming from, though. It is a long way away.
It's a long way. Yeah, it's a long way away.
I hadn't really thought about that at the time yesterday. It's only talking to you tonight and starting to realise 7 shows, 229, Southampton, Coventry, Sheffield, the trip to Spain. You know, there's half a dozen shows there between now and then.
And one of the words you mentioned there was jeopardy.
There are 3 members of CPF, though.
There are.
There is quite a lot they could do if Jacobs and Ethan Allen have got a friend. I don't know where the land lies with Chris Ridgway. But
yeah, there is
we
definitely
could,
stuff
we
there.
could absolutely have some interesting combinations between now and then.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
I'm
I'd
with you
also
on
be
that.
quite happy to see things like CPF versus True and Lacey with young guns sitting and watching from commentary.
Yeah,
Little things like that, just quick, simple things.
yeah, and I'm with you on all of that. I'm with you on all of that. But I do think they'll have some well, will they have some title matches in that? I don't know. But it just it's a long time, and that's kind of it. But it was that coupled with just there's not a lot of this build has felt like it's done much to favour or even give hope for CPF because they came into this match getting their asses handed to them.
Yeah,
They
I think it has created sympathy and support for them, as in it should have done that. But on the other hand, there's already a lot of support for them. Did they need it? And I was surprised yesterday at how much the 229 still loves the Young Guns. I'm looking forward. CPF have got to be on the card in Coventry next time, the next show, which is the 11th of May,
something like that.
12th of May, something like that. Because they are so popular in Coventry. That's where they won the trios tournament, and every time I've seen them there, the fans are louder for them than anybody else. My kids fell in love with them in Coventry, so I feel like that's maybe where they can get some of their redemption. Maybe they can get a big win there.
I get that. Yeah.
We could swap it around. We could have Danny Black versus Luke Jacobs and Ethan Allen versus Joe Lando. Have Joe Lando get a big win over Ethan Allen. That could be a nice way of doing it.
Yeah, we could do all of that. I'm intrigued to see how it plays out. And like I said, this is not me saying that anything was particularly bad here. It wasn't. It was a very fun match. I think a big part of it for me was the ending just made me feel very flat as an ending. And look, you don't always get to go home happy, right? So that's fine because again, there's a lot of subverting expectations that we're told within this story so far. So again, I can't sit here all the time and say, but don't do the tropes. Then when they don't do the tropes, go because you can't have your cake and eat it. I'm intrigued to see where it goes, but this one's kind of got me just a bit like okay. The match though that I loved, absolutely adored, was Kanji versus Charli Evans.
Yeah, me too. It was the one match from the show that broke into my top 10. And how interesting! Not only do we have Charli Evans and Kanji being a great match, which shouldn't really surprise anybody, but we also had Emerson Jane.
Love that.
We're gonna get Emerson Jane versus Kanji at some point. And by the looks of it, we might also get Charli Evans versus Emerson Jane.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Did not have that on my bingo card.
No, and it was interesting when Emerson Jane was revealed in Doncaster because she's someone I've wanted to see come into Rev Pro for a while. Again, a name that's been conspicuous by its absence because she is someone that just everywhere she wrestles, people are talking about Emerson Jane. When I seen her at Eve, she was great there. I saw her tag with Kanji the last time or the time before when I was in Wolverhampton. Like these are the wrestlers you see
and go right because she did have quite a few Rev Pro matches.
Yeah,
just a long time ago when she was Sammy Jane.
Yeah.
So it's not like they've never worked together. Just not for a long time.
Yeah, and I think this broadening in the women's division has meant there's more spots available now, right?
Yeah,
and you're
it feels fresh, right? Like, I love the Cutthroat Collective, I really do, and it has felt a little bit weird having a couple of shows this year without them. But it's not a bad thing.
No,
because what you don't want to have is it become you go from having the criticism thrown at you of having a token women's match to then having it thrown at you that it's a token cutthroat collective match.
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
you want to give opportunities to women up and down the country, not just to the same 5 women over and over again. So you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But this feels to me like a really good balance that they're getting at the moment. I still very much feel like the Cutthroat Collective are a big part of Rev Pro plans, but we're also getting to see other parts of it. And if anybody was to criticize and say Mercedes Moné having the championship being in America is going to damage Rev Pro's product because their champion's not there, then if they were to say that, they're not watching it. Because her being in America means Kanji has become like she is the face of the women's locker room, right? And she is there putting in the work and being the face of it. It's like when Ospreay was in Japan and Michael Oku became the guy.
Yeah.
When he was the cruiserweight champion. And I think it's working perfectly because we've now got this Kanji storyline of her trying to get back to Mercedes. You're going to have all the other women that are she's basically going to have the biggest target on her back, like she's the champion, but without the belt.
Yeah.
Like, it just works perfectly. You're getting win-win. You've got Mercedes and all the what's the word? Like all the eyes that she brings, all the exposure. That's the word I'm looking for. You've got all the exposure of having Mercedes and the incredible match that she delivered in Doncaster. The draw that she will be the next time she comes to the UK to wrestle for Rev Pro. But Kanji, it's not a coincidence. Kanji is like the biggest star in Rev Pro now. And there are those of us that have been there all along cheering for it. But there are going to be lots of people who Kanji is now their favourite because they have been told to believe in her.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
The Mercedes match. She's an absolute winner of the Mercedes match.
Of course
she didn't win the belt, but her career has massively benefited from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love Charli Evans. My first Charli Evans match was a bit wasted on me, her match with Alex Windsor, because it was my first ever Rev Pro show. I didn't really know who anybody was. Like, I knew who Charli Evans was. I had no idea who Alex Windsor was. I knew Charli Evans because I'd seen some Progress vignettes. That was my exposure to her and Millie McKenzie.
Yeah.
I knew who Oku was from an Ospreay promo he'd done. I knew Gabe Kidd was a New Japan young lion, and I remember Dan Maloney from Speaking Out. So I remember him coming out and talking quite passionately about his disgust with it. So that's how I remembered him. But I didn't really know any of it.
Yeah.
They were just some famous people to me and different levels of fame. And so I didn't really appreciate everything as much. I did. I enjoyed it all. But I didn't get the hype of knowing how big Charli Evans and Alex Windsor was, because I didn't really know the context. And I felt like I waited a really long time for a Charli Evans singles match since then, and it was so worth the wait. And the most exciting thing was her coming out to save Kanji, because then I'm like, ooh, am I going to get another one?
Yeah,
she's top tier, isn't she?
She is. I mean, I've heard the reputation of Charli Evans. Okay, I've never seen a match of hers until she rocked up in Doncaster, because there is so much wrestling out there, so many people to watch, that actually sometimes I like just seeing them live for the first time, and that's when I'll assess. I thought she was great there. I thought she had instant star quality, right? Gravitas, everything about. She was magnetic.
It felt like a big deal had just walked out.
And that's how it felt watching it on TV as well. So that was my first match of hers, was in person. Second match was on TV. She just carries herself so well. The match, it was technical. It was a brawl. It was hard hitting. It was violent. At times, you had to turn your head because it was
Yeah.
just. It almost felt like it was crossing a line. This woman who, when she came out in Doncaster, who was happy to be there, it seemed like good old Charli Evans, happy to be there, happy to fight. She got Kanji 1-on-1 and she went for it. And look, I know I jokingly put the tweet out there. There was the red and black as well. And I was like, oh, is this a bit of foreshadowing here? But she got so violent at times, you could have imagined her doing what Emerson Jane did and snapping and putting that target on Kanji's back. She could have done that. I thought it was fantastic. It's while I don't have an official top 10 in my head, this made my top 10 matches of the year so far. I don't know exactly where it sits, but it's made it. It
went in
incredible.
For me. I think I put it 7th. So it sat above Leon Slater and Leon Cage.
Mm-hmm.
And it sat above Danny versus Kanji. And it sat below Manders versus Leon Slater, the Southampton match.
Interesting. Those were the matches. So the Leon and Manders ones were the ones I was thinking of, and my initial was this might sit above that Southampton one for me.
Yeah,
but these are the margins we're talking, right? Like,
oh yeah, like you talk and this is why wrestling is so subjective, right? At the end of the year, you're going to if you followed my top 10 recommended list all year, you're just going to see loads of technical wrestlers and technical wrestling matches, because I'm always going to come away from a show praising the Chris Ridgway match and the Kanji match more than I am the Robbie X and the CPF match.
Yeah.
And that's simply my tastes in pro wrestling.
Sure.
It's why I adore it when I see a Robbie X match that's got that technical side. I adored his match with Kushida last year. And it's why I love it when you get to see the likes of CPF get down and dirty and it be that side of the wrestling rather than the stuff that they're so beloved for. Because I know full well, if there's 10 people in the row, there's probably 6 people who don't like the wrestling that I like, and I don't like the wrestling that they like. So can't be about one person and one taste. One thing that I loved about Charli Evans was I knew lots from her reputation about her kind of violence and her physicality and that side of it. And then I was so impressed with how well her and Kanji worked the mat and we're not talking about mat work for the sake of mat work. Otherwise, I would have been bloody gasping over blood sport, or I'd be watching the amateur Olympics.
It's funny that you said that, because I was just going to say that the idea of blood sport intrigues me, but it never quite delivers. This is what I've wanted it to be.
That show, I found a little bit boring, if I'm honest, and I don't mean to, be rude or disrespectful, but there were matches on it that I found really interesting.
Yeah.
I can't remember the perfect matchups, but there was one with Charlie Dempsey, and there was one with Shayna Baszler.
Yeah.
And there was one with Carmen Petrovic, and it sounds like I'm just saying I liked the ones with the WWE wrestlers now.
Who are you now?
I particularly liked those 3. I loved Zack Sabre Jr. and Jonathan Gresham, but that was clearly always going to be the main one. That's why it was so much longer than all the other matches. I really liked the Natalia one as well. I think that was an element of just seeing somebody completely out of their comfort zone, but she wrestled it fantastically.
Yeah.
I think it is just wrestling should be, and even I, as someone who loves that purer side of wrestling, it should be a variety show.
100%.
It's just, for me, I don't want to see the full variety. If you've got your extremes, so you've got, I'm trying to line my hands up so you can kind of roughly see them on the screen. I don't know what the extremes are. deathmatch wrestling to comedy wrestling.
Yeah.
Minoru Suzuki wrestling a doll that I saw video footage of on Twitter yesterday, to Emerson Jane having darts put through her lips and her cheeks.
Yeah.
Let's say they're your extremes. My personal tastes probably sit more like that.
Same.
There's a lot less here. I don't like those ends, but I appreciate the fact that other people do.
And that's
and
it,
your
right?
variety show, I wouldn't want 8 Chris Ridgway matches on a show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got to
I
have
want
different
one
things.
Chris Ridgway match with Chris Ridgway in it, please.
Yes.
But that's my taste.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed that Charli Evans could do such a wide variety of that.
Yeah.
And it has me excited, because you're like, ooh, now I'd love to see Charli Evans versus Danny Luna, so much so.
So yeah, isn't it
but
funny?
Then I'm also like, oh well, I'd never really considered what Charli Evans match versus a Sapphire Reed would look like.
Mm-hmm.
I had that one wasn't one that had gone through my head, but I'd like to see that now. And obviously we can't keep these guys forever. I don't know how long she's here for. I don't know how many dates are on. I know when she put out where she's wrestling. I know Rev Pro's not going to be on there, because they won't have that until she's announced. All I'm doing is looking at the to be announced dates and thinking, is there a Rev Pro show that day? But yeah, I'll enjoy every match while we have them.
Agreed, mate. Agreed. Well, you know what, Dave? That was a really fun chat about the show. Some great stuff in there. Like that match again for me. I can't wait to see where that ranks up against my matches of the year. But it felt like a pretty special one to watch. Gutted I missed that one in person. But here's some more Charli Evans in Rev Pro this year, please. Right, my friend. Feels like a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
Catch you next time.
Until next time, my friend.
See you later.
See you later, bud.